Alright, what's going on, good people? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby. Representing Team Kings of Games. And today, you guys, before I head to bed, I'm going to do an update. I was planning on doing this, Noble Knights and Dinosaurs, and, what's this deck right here? What is it? Oh yeah, for hires, but I only have time to do one. And I decided to pick the one that got the most like comments and requests, and just the most people asking about it. The second most highly requested was for hires. Third was dinos. All the requests for dinos came in with miscellaneous 1 to 3. That's just how it is. And then Noble Knights didn't get too many. I think they got about 7 requests. But either way, these are just updates that are possible just because I already have the decks. I just needed to throw in a couple cards that the decks were missing and just fix them up, make them playable, practice a little bit with them. That's what I kind of did before I got ready for the profile, so throughout the week I practiced with them. But today we're going to be doing INFERNOID, and this deck is pretty scary, you guys. Now, don't get me wrong, it has a tendency to brick, which is just common. For an INFERNOID player, you guys should understand that this deck can brick, but when the deck doesn't brick and it does do what you want it to do and what it's naturally supposed to do, there are very few decks that can actually keep up with what it's able to do, and very few decks that can play through what this deck can put out. It can put out interruptions very similar to how combo decks operate. I would say this deck is sort of like a combo / control deck. You can migrate between the two playstyles in the same duel, which is really cool. But ultimately, you can spit out negations. You have a ton of disruptions, actually, that you can put out as well. And you have spot removal. Practically every spot removal that exists. You have a bounce to the return to the hand. You have a shuffle into the deck. You have a destruction for spells and traps. You have just a flat out banish without targeting. Then you have a Raigeki and a heavy storm. You just have so much spot removal in this deck, which makes this deck so high ceiling going second. It could be played as particularly a specific going second deck if you really wanted to take it there, because it's pretty strong, you guys. But just in general, I would say this deck as a whole is really solid. Its biggest weakness is to itself, but when it doesn't brick and your opponent can't necessarily stop you with like a Lantia, it's a pretty strong deck. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into my list. Card choices vary pertaining to my playstyle, so just because you don't like it doesn't mean that I'm going to change my deck just for you. So please keep that in mind, that this is my deck and it's how I'm going to play it. You might see something unorthodox, you might not. I mean, this build doesn't have Future Fusion like I normally do, just because people are asking for a build without Future Fusion. I don't know why people just don't like Future Fusion. I love it. But let's hop into it, you guys. So we're starting off with 2 copies of INFERNOID Anunku, the daddy, and 2 copies of Deviati, the mother. So the parents of the deck, every INFERNOID has the same summoning mechanic. You guys should know what it is. If you're curious, I don't want to waste too much time in the profile because I really need to sleep. So you can always just ask in the comments. Even if I don't answer, somebody more than likely, I promise you, will answer. But yeah, they all share the same summoning mechanic. These require 3 Noids. That's why these are probably the worst cards to draw in your opening hand, because you don't ever want to summon them unless you have a loaded grave already. But if you don't have a loaded grave and you're going first, and these are drawn in your opening hand, you just look at them as bricks. That's what they are. They're discard fodder at the best, but they're not going to do much until you set your grave up, because you do not want to sacrifice 3 Noids from your hand, even if you had them. You don't. But basically, Raigeki, Heavy Storm, and on field, they negate. This one can negate spells or traps, and this one negates monster effects. And Decatron has great synergy with these, because Decatron just becomes these, and basically becomes a negation on legs. Something that has changed in my deck is, I used to play Atondel and Saitamis. I actually prefer double Saitamis now. Saitamis is just really, really strong, you guys. Like, it's incredible in every format. This deck has a really good Salamangreat Great matchup. I just wanted to put that out there. Has a really great Salamangreat Great matchup, a really great Skystriker matchup. Or I would say at least all the Salamangreats Greats and Skystrikers I played against, including my teammate Chris, who was playing Skystrikers, that I played against, I haven't really struggled that much. The best they could do was use hand traps. But man, this deck is really good against those. It could be pretty strong against Danger Thunder too, especially because it doesn't need to search. So once you've baited those 2 negations, you can actually just crack their board really easily. And LAIR can just bypass the protection of Colossus. Plus, you have cards like this. This one just banishes. And that's why I really like it, because whenever you're going second and you're trying to crack boards, you can summon one and then a second one because your ranks are still 8 or lower, or your levels are still 8 or lower. Then you can attack with both of these. And guess what? None of the INFERNOID monsters say you can only activate this effect once per turn. All of them are just once per turn, meaning once per copy. So you can actually resolve double Scythemus, and you get to banish 2 cards on the field without targeting, without destroying. It bypasses all protection, including Endymions. So I just really like him over the other Atondo. Atondo's good, it's cute, but the main reason I was playing Atondo was just so that when I would summon Deviati, I could normal summon Decatron and dump an Atondo, and he'll become level 9. I can overlay the Deviati. If you add her stars up, she's 3, 6, 9. 2 level 9s make True King of all Chlamydia. That was the only reason why I wanted to keep Atondo, but ultimately I sacrifice it what I want for what I need. And then I play the 1 Jet. So these are easier to summon. They require the banishing of 2 Infernoids from your hand or grave. So these aren't as bad, but you definitely never want to draw Jet, which is why I've considered multiple times I've considered playing 2 of it for just that instance where you draw one and you'll still have it in deck. Very similar to having like Garnet and Breeding Fusion, right? You don't ever want to draw that 1 Garnet and not have another one in your deck, because normally when you have a 1-of in your deck that you don't want to draw, I don't know what it is, I just draw it, and I don't like that. I have bad luck like that. So yeah, these are the big Infernoids. Basically, these are the cousins, and then you have the children, which this guy, honestly, I really think he has a direct correlation to Deviati, because his head looks just like Deviati's head. In fact, it probably is Deviati's head. But 3 Decatron. Decatron is one of the better Infernoids, probably the best one, just in the terms of flexibility. Now, don't get me wrong, he's not going to be better than Anunku and Deviati in certain scenarios, because he won't gain their effect on summon, but he can gain any base effect of all the Infernoids. Whatever he dumps from your deck to grave, he'll gain its level and its effect, and it's like forever. If you read it, it doesn't say until the end of the turn. So Decatron is never himself. He's a two-faced copycat. Next up, this is going to catch some people off guard, but I actually I upped the count a little bit for the smaller Infernoids, because it was A, Void Feast problems where I didn't have enough good valid targets for it, and then B, where the second one just came up so much. So I decided to bump Patrulia up to 2. I also decided to bump Harmadic up to 2. Now, originally, in my previous list, I played 1 of each of them, which I did that because I wanted to minimize on the Infernoids, you know, because they're the bricks. It's crazy, but whenever you draw Infernoids in your hand that aren't like Decatron, it kind of sucks. But whenever you draw Decatron in conjunction with the little ones, you have really cool plays where you could just normal Harmadic, normal Decatron, dump Harmadic, and then banish Harmadic to summon this one and pop 2 monsters, for example, and then you could like synchro for 7. You know, it's just cool stuff like that. Or you could just link it to a Nightmare and then clear 3 cards for 2, which is really cool. But outside of that, like, they're really bad to draw. So I understand, and I really do agree with myself, my past self, for playing 1 of each. But I also understand that the problem was coming up too much, where I needed an extra copy. Like, for example, there's a Feast play that came up where I needed specifically to get out Harmadic, and Antra off of a Feast so I can get 3 DD Crows playing against Salman Greats. The reason being was because I had already resolved the Feast getting Jet and a double Decatron, which meant I only had 1 Decatron left in deck and then the Scythemus. And even if I got that out, I still wouldn't have had what I needed. I needed 3 DD Crows. Not negations, DD Crows. And I almost lost because I didn't have that access to the third one. So yeah, I just really like having the extra copy of him. And Patrulia is just insane this format. It's a really strong card, and it helps you to make Omega as well. And then Antra is really good for just getting over anything that can't be destroyed. And whenever it can't be targeted or destroyed, Scythemus is your man. So that's it for the Infernoids. Should be about 15. Normally, you actually want to keep it between 12 and 13, but I decided to go for 15. I really just wanted to trust my gut feeling. Next up, for some supporter cards, we do play... This is Infernoid Lair of Darkness, so we do play 3 copies of Lilith. Now, Lilith is just... She's insane. Like, I decided to go the route of Void Feast Turbo. Now, I feel if Infernoids are going to be played competitively viable, there are 2 different routes to exploit. Now, one route would be focusing heavily on Void Imagination, which is what most players tend to do. The reason why I didn't like that was that my game plan was centered around that one card that was more fragile than Feast. The reason why it's more fragile than Feast is because in order to resolve Void Imagination, you actually have to go second. That's the best way. Your opponent's not going to have an extra deck monster if you're going first. And the problem with that becomes now you have to try to resolve Imagination when you're playing into both an established board and also when you're playing into hand traps and back rows. So because hand traps, back rows, and also monster effect disruptions will normally exist in an established board for a player, it's really hard to resolve imagination. It's way more difficult than resolving Void Feast going first, because the only things that can stop Void Feast are hand traps. But when you're going second, hand traps and monster effects and back rows can stop your Void Imagination. So there's a lot more things that can interact and prevent it from happening. And that's why I feel that it's a safer route to go for Void Feast. Void Imagination is still a great card, and I still do play it. So while my deck is not absolutely just focused on resolving it, I do have just as many ways to get to it as any Infernoid deck does. So the deck still has a high ceiling going second, but I prefer the route of Void Feast Turbo because I think Void Feast is just bonkers. Its negations, its disruptions, and its follow-ups kind of just says, kill me now or I'm going to kill you next turn. So Lilith gives you access to those. And then we also have 2 copies of Arima, because LAIR is really important, and I found that this was better than Terraforming itself because he also can be an Upstart Goblin instead of just the LAIR whenever you need him to be. So he's just better than Terraforming. And whenever you have both him and LAIR, sometimes you can distribute one of your opponent's monsters to actually draw. Because this deck, if it's not normal summoning Decatron, the only normal summons are going to be these and this. And then the only hand trap that I've ever played in Infernoids, like just ever in general, it's always been Cyframe Gear Gamma, ever since the card came out. The Cyframes kind of came out a little bit after, but anyways, Gamma is insane in this deck. So it has some really unique properties in this deck particularly because you can draw it in conjunction with your combo pieces. Not only will it protect you from hand traps, but it also can be resolved even if you establish your board because Infernoid monsters tribute a monster you control for cost. So basically, as you're resolving their effects, you're actually clearing your field so that you'll be able to Gamma. So whenever you have Gamma in hand and a Void Feast play, and your opponent doesn't ask the Void Feast, because if they ask the Feast, you just Gamma it, and you're going to resolve the Void Feast. But if they don't have Ash, whenever you have Void Feast and Ash, Void Feast and Gamma, you actually have 4 negations. You have 3 negations instead of 2. Void Feast would normally get you 2 negations, and then the Gamma becomes a 3rd whenever you're done with your first 2 negations plus the DD Crow off of Jet. And if you have LAIR, it's more insane. You get to Gamma them right after that. And also Chum Block, because it'll summon itself in Driver to protect you from being attacked. So yeah, it's really strong. And even if your opponent wants to, for example, negate, let's say Decatron's trying to negate their card and you negate theirs, Decatron would have to attribute himself for cost to resolve it, depending on which one he was. So if he was any of the bigger Infernoids, he can be resolved in that matter, where he'll tribute himself for cost. And if your opponent wanted to, let's say, for example, Jackal King you could chain Gamma to the Jackal King, and then the Decatron will resolve. And it's just really strong going second, too. When you want to resolve Void Imagination and you have Gamma in hand, you have a higher chance because now you can either bait 2 negations or you're basically going to resolve the Imagination if that was the only way they had to stop it. So, yep, that's it for the monsters. Really like Gamma. I recommend it. You definitely want to play the Omega with the Gamma. You can make Omega without Gamma, but just you definitely want to play the Omega because it's a problem solver card as well. Now moving forward to the spells, because Extra Deck never really mattered for Infernoids, Extravagance is a great card to play in this deck. There's very little drawback. Very few times have I ever actually needed the Extra Deck. Really, you only ever need it when you need it, not want it, but need it when you're trying to resolve Imagination, which is going for a Tiara. And if you ever banish all 3 Tiaras, that's just, it wasn't your game. But it normally doesn't happen, so that's the only chance or drawback that this card has. But also, just keeping in mind that you're not going to draw this every duel, so it's not like you're just never going to be able to see. It's not like you're always going to be banishing Tiaras. But just keep in mind, that's literally the only drawback of this card, because you don't draw any cards. This deck, either it searches or it just doesn't do any adding at all. And then also at the same time, it's really good Ash bait. Because I'd rather them Ash this than them Ash, for example, them Vanishment. Which Vanishment is a really strong card in this deck. It actually has the highest ceiling as a spell by itself because it could get you access to Feast or Imagination, which Feast and Imagination are the highest ceiling cards in your deck. They have higher ceiling than Decatron, they have higher ceiling than Anunku and Deviati. Why? Because they will give you access to those cards and a plethora of additional resources for you to use to your disposal. So yeah. We have 3 Vanishment. It's insane. It's a searcher for your deck. It actually has a really awkward drawback where you can only summon Noids, but normally it doesn't hurt that much. Just keep that in mind that after it resolves, it's for the rest of the turn clause, so you can summon other things besides Noids first, and then you want to resolve this last. That's why whenever I have Lilith in hand in this, I never activate this and then try to summon Lilith. You have to summon Lilith first. So yeah, and it also has another way for you to get over monsters because it can banish the Noid that you have that's battling your opponent's monster in that monster. So Infernoids have a lot of ways to deal with problem cards. The base of all their effects are just to get over things. They all have spot removal, so they're really strong going second deck, and I just like that my deck is really strong going first, and just because it's Infernoids, it's really strong going second too. I decided to maximize on Void Imagination. The reason being is because when you do lose the dice roll and you do have to go second, this card can be a godsend, and sometimes it could be the only way you're going to get back into the game. That's just if you play your cards right, if your hand is good enough and you didn't break on like double Anunku, double Deviati and stuff like that, then you could try to bait as many negations as you can and try to resolve this. You definitely want this to be the last card you play. You never want to play it first, because if they negate it, that's kind of the highest ceiling card just thrown out of your hand. But in multiples, it doesn't hurt, because there's actually very little hard ones per turn in general with the Infernoids. Like Void Feast ain't hard ones per turn. I think Vanishment's probably the only one. Yeah, Vanishment. But Imagination, its activation is not hard once per turn. You can activate as many as you want. I believe its effect itself is not hard once per turn. Wow. I've never resolved the Fusion Summon more than once, but that's pretty nutty that it's actually not once per turn. But anyways, 3 layers. I like the 5 layers. I like Orima a lot, and I just feel that LAIR is probably one of the next high ceiling cards in the deck, and it just kind of broke this deck in general. It just, Infernoids play LAIR probably better than most decks do, because all of their monsters do have that ability where they tribute a monster you control for cost, so you can always tribute your opponent's monster to negate one of their cards, which is one of the best feelings you'll ever have as an Infernoid player. To literally tribute your opponent's Electromite, to negate something, or to tribute your opponent's Master Endymion, to negate the activation of a Jackal King. Stuff like that, and it's a tribute for cost, so LAIR kind of bypasses negations too, where you have LAIR up and your opponent's like, okay, I respond to your Deviati's effect to negate my monster effect. And you're like, well, my cost has to be paid, and the thing is, the monster you're trying to use to negate this, I'm actually tributing that for cost. So when you tribute that monster for cost, your opponent is not allowed to use that negator on you because you got rid of it for cost, which is pretty bonkers when you think about it. So yeah, LAIR's pretty good in this deck. And you can actually spam a lot of tokens off of this when you do a lot of tributing on your turn because you're the turn player, and you get a lot of tokens which can protect your board or give you more monsters to tribute. High ceiling one-offs, Monster Gate, Reasoning, and 1-for-1. These are the only one-offs that matter in this deck. And for the traps, it's very simplistic on the traps. Very simplistic. It's not very heavy on the traps at all. I could have went more back row heavy, but I just felt the only trap that I ever wanted to see was Void Feast. So what I did was I played 6 Void Feasts. And then Void Imagination, 9 Void Feasts. Lilith, 12 Void Feasts. So I have 12 ways to get into Void Feast. And for the valid targets for it, I have 9 valid targets for Void Feast. Technically speaking, just having one in hand, Trap Trick and Lilith can get me a Void Feast, which means if I have one in hand, plus any one of those, it's still combo. So yeah, Void Feast is nuts. It's actually probably the most bonkers trap that they ever could have given Infernoids. I don't think any other trap they would have made would have been better than this, and if they made anything better than it, it just wouldn't be fair, because this card already in itself is just not fair. It's ridiculously strong, and this normally, what most people will do is they'll Ash or Ogre your Vanishment. Whenever you already have this in hand, and they Ash your Vanishment, you could just activate this, sending the Vanishment, and they kind of just can't Ash because they already, they have to have a second Ash. And then also, whenever they Ogre your Vanishment, and you have this in hand, just keep in mind, as long as you have another Void spell or trap in your hand, you can still resolve this. So, drawing this for turn is pretty strong, because when they stop the Vanishment, it's because they don't want you to get to this card, but they're not cognizant of the fact that you actually would have it in your hand. So, yep, that's the main deck. I think that what I'm going to do here is a test hand. So, extra deck, I'm going to speed through it because it doesn't matter. 3 Unts. This is 3 Tiaras. I don't own any Infernoid Tiaras, but this is the auntie / grandmama. I'd say she's the great auntie. She's the grandmama To some of them, and to some of them, she's the great auntie. To Anunku and Deviati, she's the sister. I guess I would say she's their sister. So yeah, Tiara's nuts. And you know what? I would say that she has to be their parent. Like Tiara's the grandma. Yeah, she's the grandma. And then we have Archfiend, Apprentice, and Chimera. So these are the Link 2s that I had 2 down pointing arrows that I chose. This is for when you don't have LAIR. This is for when you do have LAIR. This is for when it doesn't matter if you have LAIR or not. You can always make this. And it loads your grave with Noids, and it's not once per turn. So it's an incredible extender and problem solver card. I'd play 3 of it over these, but this comes up for for damage pushes, and this comes up for damage pushes, and it recycles your stuff. So, yep. Kind of just wanted one of each, because I still like Akashic and Security Dragon, just for more not disruptions, but for more ways to break boards without with bypassing protection from destruction and stuff like that. So normally you'll bounce at the Akashic, bounce a Security Dragon, then you'll banish 2 more with Sight to Miss, and you can just clear entire boards going second. And I still play the Nightmares. I really like them because they discard your dead Infernoids in hand. That way they can be used as banish fodder to just summon more Infernoids. So it really helps. And Links don't have levels, so you can actually spam your board. Whenever you Link summon, you can spam your board more. And then I played 1 Omega for the only Synchro target that I wanted to play. And then 1 Leviair for the only XYZ that I wanted to play. The reason why I chose these over everything else is because I felt that everything else would not be a necessity, but this is needed to put your banished cards back, and this is also needed to put your banished card back. So these are both problem-solving cards that kind of mitigate the issue where Infernoids have a hard time getting into the grind game. When you've summoned a Nunku like twice, that means you've banished 6 of your 15 Noids. When you've summoned so many Infernoids so many times, you eventually will run out of targets because you only have 15. And just keep that in mind. So when you start running out, you kind of have to resolve like cards like Omega and Leviair, because normally it's really hard to get Tiara up to that point where you can use her effect to put banished cards back. So you just kind of need those cards. I'm gonna do a test hand real quick before I end the video. But if you don't want to watch the video at this point, you don't have to. I'm not forcing anybody to do anything. I think I need to get some medicine though. Man. Yeah, I think I need to get some medicine. But yeah, you guys, I'm gonna do this quick test hand before I end the video. I just need probably some green tea or something, and then yep, off to bed for me after this. And all the other deck profiles, the Noble Knights and the For Hires and the Dinos, I'll try to get those done tomorrow. I don't make any promises because I do know that for sure tomorrow I have to go down and get some water connected, and then I have to pay my car note. I have to go meet up with somebody to sell some cards so that I can get the money to pay off a couple of fines. Yeah, just a lot of stuff. I don't know what I'm going to be able to do tomorrow, except for I know what I have to do tomorrow. Let's see what this hand is looking like, you guys. I really hope this is a great hand. I don't want to get embarrassed by saying Infernoids can brick and then turn around and brick on the video. But just always remember that it's how the deck is, you know. It has some good times, it has some bad times. But if you're always drawing Void Vanishment, you know, like it's gonna unbrick your hand every time. Like I really love drawing Void Vanishment. Like it can make every hand playable. It's a 1 card 3 interruptions by itself. So let's see what we draw. Lilith, Extravagance, Imagination, Trap Trick, Void Feast. Yeah, this hand's bonkers. This hand is bonkers. We didn't draw any Infernoids. Please, Extravagance, don't draw Infernoids. I'd say to be fair, I'll grab like from here. I wasn't trying to look at it, I promise. There. I just go top, bottom, top, bottom. So I grab from the top, grab from the bottom, grab from the top. And that should be 6. Because I want to draw 2. Driver and another Extravagance. So we know for sure that we're not using any of the cards the Extravagance has drawn us. Thanks, Extravagance, for doing nothing. But hey, at least we got a chance. It just didn't succeed. So next thing I'd do is I'd say Normal Lilith and Tribute her for cost. Let's go ahead and grab Double Feast and a Trap Trick, because we already drew a Feast. And do I have a dice? Ay, wait. They're somewhere. Well, we'll just. I'm not looking. I'm not looking. We'll just any mini money mow it, honestly. And I'll do it like this: any mini money, any mini money, any mini money mow. All right, so it's trap trick. That's fair. So trap trick gets set. Those go back. So now we know for sure we have a dead trap trick in our hand because we can't activate two of them. So that's set. I would say. Sheesh and rice. I'd hold the imagination. Yeah, I'd hold the imagination just in case. Because if we set this right and we activated this, sent that for cost. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to resolve. Yeah, so we just set the trap trick. We activate trap trick, you know, and then we go ahead and banish a feast to set a feast. Then that same feast, we're going to activate it still in the draw phase. Activate feast. If they have the ash, they probably would have used it on extravagance. No, not probably. They would have. I guarantee you that. And that's fine because the extravagance didn't draw us anything extravagant. 26 minutes in. Alright, so yep. So this gets set and then we'll activate it and we'll actually send feast for the feast because I want to keep imagination. And yeah. Once you've resolved one feast, Infernoids just tend to get better because you just unbrick your hand. I'm sorry, you unbrick your deck actually because you get an Anunku and a Deviati out of your deck and that means lower chances of drawing them because those are the worst cards to draw. Like all the other Infernoids, I don't mind drawing them, but dang, I really don't like drawing Anunku and Deviati. But you just have to play at least two of each. And you never ever want to use both Decatrons to send like two Deviati or two Anunku. Because you always want one of each in your deck so that you can always resolve imagination. So it sucks, even when you're playing a deck like Danger Thunder where you know a Speller Trap negation won't work, you have to keep your Nunku and Deviati in your deck. Like, for example, right now, I have an imagination in my hand. So we'll dump those. You know, you have the negations, you have the DD Crow, you know, and your grave's just kind of sitting there fat. Thank God that wasn't in a Nunku. And then, I don't want to risk it with extravagance. I don't, because my extra deck went from 15 to 9, so now it's a very high chance I'll only be left over with 3, and one of those 3 would have to be a Tiara. So I don't want to risk it. So I would just go ahead and as a matter of fact, per se as to bait, I'd probably banish those 3. And depending on the matchup, you would summon one or the other. It doesn't matter. But let's say you want to protect the imagination. I definitely say summon Deviati. Once you summon Deviati, you can go ahead and activate the imagination, and then you'd send it away. And you kind of get to go boom. And that's if they have an extra deck monster, of course. But we're just playing under the premise that they do. Go boom, 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 and boom. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, we get to send one more. I'd say keep Patrouilla, keep Harmadic. You need those definitely. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna keep that Harmadic in there, and I'm gonna send another Patrouilla, and I'm gonna send Decatron, and I'm gonna keep double Harmadic and Entra in my deck. And so you send 6, you kind of just win. Yeah, you're supposed to. And we only banished one of the proxy tiaras, so you have 2 more. And we didn't banish any of the unts, so you're going to summon tiara, and we're going to go ahead and just send 3 unts. And then mill 3, hopefully we mill some noids, even though there's very little left. Yeah, I didn't think we would mill any. You get to clear 3 cards. One of the cards you want to clear would be the Tiara, but seeing as Deviati is already there, you wouldn't be able to summon any more Noids anyways. So you just want to clear those cards, and you just want to punch with both of these. If you felt you could go for a bigger push, for just damage sake, you could just clear both of these with the but I'd rather keep the Deviati up there, and you kind of just play it out like that. You see as far as you can get. I know for certain that because the graveyard is established so well, and because you can summon a Nunku and Deviati multiple times, and you'll just be able to outgrind some of the certain decks that are out there. Not all of them. Like I know some decks can really just they can last a long time. Like, but for Salamangreats, because you have all those DD Crows, it just gets nearly impossible for them to keep up. Because they're just all their graveyard recursion is just kind of just it's shut down. So you take away what allows them to grind, and it doesn't become a grind. Yeah, I'll end it right there. I did say only 110 cent. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. I appreciate it. I am kind of sick. Yeah, so I sound kind of funny. But thank you guys for the people that are reasonable. And choose not to troll me for stuff that I don't have control over. You guys have a beautiful day. Don't do drugs. Don't hurt your brain cells. Stay positive. Stay positive and not negative. Don't hate on each other. And you'll definitely be hearing from me soon. Infernoids are awesome. Peace out, yo.